originally we're supposed to perceive reality in a very neutral, equanimous way, where the masculine species, the feminine species are seen for their uniqueness, and at the same time they are not seen as rivals, but seen as equally complementing beings. Now, with the degradation of spirituality and overall collective intelligence and understanding of what is right and wrong and what life is about and so on, we also naturally degraded our understanding of sexuality, because sexuality and spirituality go hand in hand. We are the product of sexuality. Our evolution happens on this planet through the act of sexuality, of attraction. And our understanding of the sacredness of this act has degraded. The value and the importance of passing on our genes, our genetic codes further, and creating better species also has declined or is non-existent maybe. So we basically don't understand why we procreate. So we only have an instinct or an instinct-based idea of sexuality. Feminine species do not understand the peculiarity of being a feminine species or a female, and male do not understand their strength. So there is over-exaggerated idea of masculinity and femininity, and yet from a spiritual perspective, evolutionary perspective, females have a lot of importance for the spiritual evolution, because they have naturally embedded mechanism of creating another body through their body. And so their intelligence and their whole hormonal system is made not only for procreation, but for evolution, for a spiritual procreation, and also for guiding the other species, which are the male species. The male species system is such that they are to protect and they are to make sure that the species are healthy and that they can manage the phenomenal reality. Yet the imbalance has been created long ago, and the rivalry or competition took place. And so the roles were not properly understood. And nowadays we're living in pretty much imbalanced society, which is action-driven, which is more pro-masculine, which diminishes the role of female species in their essence. Not that females have to have any superiority, but female beings have to understand their essence. So the education for female species is different. The spirituality for female species also a little bit differs. Because even though we have same brain and all, our hormonal system is different. So this information has to be shared with people from early age, so that they create natural respect within themselves toward the difference and other species, so you don't compete or just compete through attraction, which is happening now. And so both species have important role, but for a male to evolve spiritually, the female is absolutely necessary. And the female is a guide for a male to evolve further in life. And the male is the female's protector and provider. So it's not that the female is a parasite and the male is to provide for her, but because the female is supposed to give wisdom and give intuitive insights, guide the male in the phenomenal reality. And the male would be successful in the phenomenal reality and would provide, feed the female, protect her, nurture her, so that she would emanate that spiritual wisdom and protect from a spiritual point of view. That's why female were associated with occult, because the female means that she's protecting on a subtler level. Occult means concealed. I don't mean here magic, but because of degradation of our spiritual knowledge and understanding of things, female was associated eventually, or was put into a position of a whore, or associated with a witch, or pushed to use that knowledge and that's supposedly spiritual wisdom to actually control and manipulate man, because man took over the whole power and started diminishing the value of the female, started abusing, using, and misusing the female for their own. So they thought that creating the institution of marriage, they would capture the female for their own, or many females, and use their power. So male species naturally have this embedded in themselves. For example, they know that somehow if female likes them, or many female girls, women like a man, he will be successful. So this idea brought up a lot of players in our society who were consumers. So this player idea started, or the idea of a gigolo, or someone who is using a female sexual energy, and not only sexual energy, but female thoughts and emotions. The female would suffer, would think about a man, hoping to be with him, and the man would meanwhile create a career or succeed in the world, for instance. So these all imbalances, perversion, came from degradation, spiritual misunderstanding of what is the role of each species. And so at the moment, there is also a lot of perversion, because the system that had been established through religions of escapism, through religions of fanatism, of religion of destruction of the family union, which is supposed to be sacred, and proper spiritual procreation, resulted in the fact that people don't understand anymore what is family, what is the role of both species, and how to address each other. So there's a lot of fear, dissatisfaction, and female intelligence got degraded too, because the system did not promote anymore education, proper education of females, so that the female would really feel empowered spiritually, knowledge-wise, and so on. Females were banished from many religions and still are. And it was because of the fear, because the priesthood, which took over religions, knew that females have power. So they created a myth that a menstruating woman cannot enter a temple, for example, because a menstruating woman is supposed to be very powerful during the menstruation days. When she was emanating, is supposed to be emanating power and knowledge, and people would sit around her and charge, for instance, in ancient times. So then there were some occult groups which still continued worshipping this menstruating woman and so on, yet it became like an occult, and so many misconceptions came, and perversion and abuse again of sexual energy, and raping of females and so on. So we're living, these are the dark ages where everything sacred is misunderstood, and we don't have that intelligent level to really understand sexuality through spirituality, or spirituality through sexuality. Because in that case, there is a equanimous, neutral perception. It's just natural flow of interaction between different species. But through the perversion, there is ongoing, growing dissatisfaction. Females' intelligence is now very much below the needed one, and females are dragged into constant pursuit of false, fake beauty. They're constantly deluded into or pushed into shopping, beautifying themselves. So their energy, which is supposed to go on to procreation and sustenance of their clan, their family, their children, is going through the insecurities or imposed insecurities, going into buying, into trying to be something that they are not. And the male are taking advantage, and the male are promoting models of women through singers, through media, of being like horse because it's supposed to be attractive. Yet the female image is more and more diminished. Now, on the other hand, the spiritual man at some point realized that yes, they cannot evolve without a female. So they created a female goddess, and they started worshipping female in the form of a goddess, which would be an escapist image or an exalted image of a perfected woman, which they no longer could see in an everyday life. And so there is this deep crisis inside a male, where on one hand he's looking up for a goddess, which would be also sexually attracted and so on. And yet they can't, but she has to be also an intelligent one, a supreme. Yet in an everyday life, they cannot find such a female, because female species degraded. So they find women who are insecure and trying to compensate their insecurities with more makeup, more clothes, or different stylish clothes, yet are not able to nurture that man's intelligence or support him in a spiritual way as he expects they would. So they either escape into this degraded form of spirituality, which is escapist spirituality, and come back to worshipping the exalted archetype of female as goddess and hope to achieve some liberation, which becomes again just a power trip, because they don't achieve usually liberation through this and achieve only some powers which delude and mislead them. Or they retire if they're not that maybe spiritually inclined man. They look for, they project their ideal female on some woman from online who tries to play a role of an exalted woman. Or they consider, they no longer are aware of a woman's potential, so they no longer see her as a spiritual guide, yet this longing inside is strong. They can't explain it. There's subconscious longing. And so they project it onto sexuality. If she has some kind of if she demonstrates through the pornographic movie or some other image some power, they maybe watch pornography not just for the sake of excitement, but also for the sake of imagination, imagining, stimulating their creative potential that they cannot stimulate with the woman who is next to them. Because that woman does not know or is no longer aware that she's supposed to be the very source of her man's success and spiritual evolution. So she's no longer that foundation as she's supposed to be. And so because of lack of this knowledge, and of course this video would take many hours if we start talking about it in detail, but I've written it in my books. So there's a big deal about this female and male imbalance, because our society is very imbalanced. And even if we try to pursue spirituality and we try to awake to equanimous being, we need to balance within. We need to realize what we are for also in this phenomenal reality as female and male species. So it all has to be integrated, not just seen as fragments and bits and pieces. Everything has to come into one. So, and many spiritual groups also abuse this idea. They see, for example, Tantra as some sort of a form of expressing sexual repression, which is not. And it happens, or this interpretation took place because people are sexually repressed. They are not able to have that one female with who they can express all their needs and fantasies and refine through sexual process. And so they need to look for the spirituality that would allow that. And so, because in a way, if the woman is spiritually evolved and she understands how the man is from her wisdom point of view, she can help that man to spiritually refine and help him to liberate from different kind of tensions of the past or whatever tensions he goes through in the mundane life. And this happens through sexuality. Yet it doesn't happen through changing of partners, through group sex, through different kind of perversion. People get into perversion because sex is still taboo, it's misunderstood, it's either totally restricted or allowed to perversion, bestiality degree. And so there is no balance, there is no actual understanding what this act is for, how to approach it, how to deal with all these things. And that's why the result is sexually transmitted diseases, emotional hurt, pain, sex for money, money for sex, and so on. So all these things, they come from absolute lack of knowledge of what role sexuality plays in our spiritual evolution.